Well, and that's really the way the play works, right? Is through mystery. That's, I think, like the central scariness of the play is the ominous not knowing what's going on. Welcome in to a very exciting episode of No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. I'm Jacob, I am here with Jackson, and I am very excited to welcome you to our themed month for season 14. Cue the spooky music, Halloween in April.
Yes, Halloween in April. Excited to observe this new tradition of Halloween in April. Haven't done that before, and excited to do it on this podcast, especially getting to talk about some kind of spooky plays, or not just like spooky plays, but plays where like ghosts and spirit and the ethereal play a role in the pivotal action of the play.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder what the odds are that our podcast begins a new cultural movement around Halloween in April. It feels ripe for the picking, honestly, because of how big Halloween has become, like especially among I don't know the generations very well. I have a hard time getting them right. But I would say like millennials and the next generation younger than millennials, like Halloween has become an outsized importance holiday for like that age group. And given that, and there's already a model for Christmas in July, the idea that we would just do Halloween twice a year, like that seems like it might be like that might happen.
Yeah, might as well. Let's see it, Target.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be driven by stores. Our little theater podcast is probably not gonna do it in the end. But if it happens, people will come back and will be in the Wikipedia article about it.
There you go.
Like, coined by the podcast No Script, a theater podcast, so that they could have an excuse to talk about spooky plays in a fun and wonky fashion.
Yes. Well, while you're waiting for the cultural movement to kick off, we're grateful for you to check into this podcast to give you inspiration for that Halloween in April revolution. But excited to chat about this script today. This play is a great one to kick it off with, because it is both like there's murder, there's mystery, there's ghosts and devils and music, all sorts of good things. And
there's some very frightening scenes in this play.
Absolutely.
I mean, even to read some very frightening scenes.
Yep.
I directed a number of years ago. I may have said this before on the podcast. I directed a one act that I think was like clearly a horror or a scary one act. And I'd done some like supernatural directing, some horror directing. And now, since then, I've directed a fair number of like sort of horror spooky plays. It's become like weirdly a genre that I've done quite a bit of work in. But I remember this one act as I was reading it for the first time being like, that is terrifying. Yeah. That's terrifying to even read. And I had that experience again with A Covenant, which I've read a couple of times. I'll talk a little bit about my previous experience with it later. But the first time reading Covenant, I remember the descriptions of the darkness, the descriptions of the freaking cat, man, the cross. I mean, we'll get to all of it. But I mean, scary, scary stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's the scene where the cross ends up turning upside down. Spooky stuff. Good. Excited for the conversation on it today. Excited to talk about it. You said it already, Covenant by York Walker. First time that I've engaged this script. Excited to hear kind of your history with the script as well, Jacob, and excited to kick the conversation out to all of you as we kick off this spooky month. However, before we do, wanted to take just a second and say thank you, as we always do at the start of our podcast, especially in themed month. We want to say a special thank you to the patrons at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast for making this show and things like Themed Month happen. Thank you all so much for being patrons of the show. You all make it, you make the wheels turn. you definitely are such an important part of this podcast. Thank you all so much. If you're looking for a way to help out the show, patreon.com/noscriptpodcast is a great way to do it. If you're looking for a way to just get involved more in the show, there's some great conversations over there. We put some patron-only posts over there, a number of different tiers, lowest one being just $1, $12 over the course of the year. You can find us over on patreon.com/noscriptpodcast and get involved with the show a little bit more and help us keep doing themed months like this one. Thank you all so much. We'll see you at patreon.com/noscriptpodcast.
Big thank you. And now back to the script.
Here we go.
So, we are in our themed month. If you are new to the podcast or if you've not been with us for themed months in previous seasons, the idea here is that while we try to spend the bulk of our podcast episodes talking about really varied plays from really varied voices, plays that don't really between episode to episode share anything in common. We're really going for variety and diversity. I know those are scary buzzwords these days, but we still believe in the strength, in the meaning, in the power of diversity, and that's what we aim for in what we program. But once a season, we spend 4 episodes, about a month of episodes, looking at plays which share something essential in common. Across the course of our history, we've done a lot of different kinds of things, plays from particular time periods, plays by particular playwrights, plays that have common thematic elements or structural elements or lengths or forms. This time around, we are looking at 4, we'll call them, I guess, spooky plays or supernatural plays. Plays that would be, I think, well marketed if they were presented at a theater in the month of October. Let's say something like that, right?
Yeah,
have those kinds of elements in common. We'll talk about scariness, I'm sure. We'll talk about fear, I'm sure. We'll talk about how to stage supernatural things in the theater where the special effects are much more limited than they are in film. Film, of course, maybe besides literature, film is the horror genre. It's where horror has been developed at a really high rate, is a whole film language around horror. So we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff this month, I'm sure. This is a great play to talk about because it is a theatrical fear fest, as we've mentioned in the preset. I mean, it is clearly designed to have some things happen that are scary in the context of the theater. I think this story probably works as a film, but the way that the scariness and the elements are built are clearly distinctly built for film language and film experience. We're going to talk about that. I think it will be a great conversation. I first came across this play a couple of years ago. What I study and work on and research in my work is contemporary American drama. Surprise, surprise, given the podcast. I probably could have figured that one out, I bet. But, so as part of that study, I read a lot of new plays. When I first came across this play, it was at its world premiere at Roundabout, which we'll talk about. And so I read it, and then I had an opportunity through some connections I have here at the university to talk with York Walker and interview with him about the play, about the nature of theater, as part of my own study and research. And I'll talk a little bit some of the things that he shared. But it was a really great conversation. York is an amazing human being. I mean, his ability to talk about theater in a really generous and curious and excited way. His willingness to talk with me like a random scholar at the University of Montana, while he is a well award-winning New York and Chicago-based playwright. Just a really cool guy, really great conversation. I'll be excited to bring that out. So I've known about this play for a couple of years now, and this felt like the moment to bring it in, given what it is. York Walker, new playwright to the podcast, so I'll provide you a brief overview on York. He is a playwright and screenwriter, originally from Chicago and now based in Harlem. When he talks about in a number of interviews, knowing that he wanted to be an actor for a long time, starting acting in high school and eventually going to college for it. And then he went and joined the acting apprenticeship program at the Actors Theater of Louisville, and then eventually went and got an MFA in acting from the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. So we often like to say Jeff Sweet, famous playwright and playwriting teacher, talks about two great categories of people that oftentimes make great playwrights: actors and journalists. And York Walker certainly comes from the actor lane, and I think that's very clear to me in a play like Covenant. In 2020, York became the inaugural recipient of the Vineyard Theater's Coleman Domingo Award, which, according to them, is bestowed annually to a multifaceted black male or male-identifying theater artist to provide support and resources to create new work. He's also a member of Marcus Gardley's New Wave Writers Workshop, and at least is or was a member of Lena Waithe's Hillman Grad Mentorship Program. He's done some story work. He's done a fair bit of screenwriting. If you watch the FBI show on CBS, he's been sort of a story editor on that a number of times. As a playwright, York has had productions at Manhattan Theater Club, Victory Gardens, Harlan Stage, Fire This Time Festival, and the Actors Theater of Louisville. Some of his other plays include Soul Records, or his other plays and screenplays include Soul Records, Holcomb and Hart, and The Seance. So Covenant is based on, first, York Walker, a number of interviews, including with me, but then also other places, talks about wanting to write a horror play. He talks about being inspired by the movies of Jordan Peele, where like the Black experience is at the center of a horror story, and was interested in how could that work as a theater experience, as a play. In our conversation, we talked a lot about the difference between film and theater because he's both a screenwriter and a playwright. So he was sort of churning that over and talks about being on a drive. As I understand it, I think he was driving for like Lyft or Uber. He was driving around and had in his head this vision of a black woman in a blue dress standing in the darkness. That, of course, Jackson will describe as the opening image of the play. And he has this picture in his head and he goes, what is this? Is this a play? How can I make something out of this? And from that comes this connection to this sort of myth, the American myth of Robert Johnson. Even if you don't recognize the name, I think you'll probably recognize the idea of a blues singer and guitarist in the 30s who sells his soul to the devil in order to gain access to his incredible musical gifts. And so building this play from that myth, you get this play. It had an online digital play reading with Arizona Theater Company in 2020, and in 2021, it was part of South Coast Rep Pacific Playwrights Festival, which is a digital reading as well in 2021. It had its world premiere, live, full, and in person at the Roundabout Theater Company off Broadway in October of 2023. The October-November time slot will become very relevant in the next couple of things. In October of 2023, it sold out. It was named a New York Times Critics Pick, and they extended the run for a long time because of how, audiences just loved it. In October and November of the next year, it was at Theater Alliance in D.C., it was at Arts West in Seattle early this year in 2025. And then in October, November of 2025, so 2023, 2024, 2025 Halloween productions. In this coming Halloween, October, November 2025, it is at the Paramount Theater in Chicago. If you are around near in Chicago, you can check out this production in October, November at the Paramount Theater.
Yes, indeed. Excited to hear about some of those productions as they get more and more. It was cool to read some of the interviews on the productions that have already been out and about. Excited for the conversation today. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the quick summary of this play before we get started. I'm going to do my best to keep it as short as possible because there's so much in this play to discuss. This play is set in Georgia in 1936, and it's focused on a family and two extra family characters. I'll introduce the family first. I'll just read through the character descriptions. It's a nice little five-hander, so I get to read the character descriptions today. We've got Mama, who's a black woman in her early 40s, Violet and Avery's mother, full of regret. The only thing holding her world together is her love for Avery and her belief in God. Then we have Avery. Avery, who is a black woman, 24, dreams of seeing the world outside of this town, a woman coming into her own and terrified. And then we have Violet, the youngest daughter. She's a black woman, 19, Ruthie's best friend, black sheep of the family, loves her older sister, Avery, fiercely. And then we have Ruthie. She's a black woman, 19, the innocent one, obsessed with love or the idea of it. And then we have Johnny James, or Honeycomb, as he is later named. He's a black man, 24, guitar player, local celebrity, awkward-turned ladies' man, has been in love with Avery since he was 12 years old. Now, the play starts, as Jacob already said, with Ruthie giving this monologue about secrets and about like what's hidden and what people are holding on to, and all of these characters have secrets that slowly come out as a result of this play. We then have Avery meeting Johnny for the first time in a long time. Johnny is a kind of local boy, kind of a darling of this family, a friend of this family, who's gone away for some time, and he's come back, and he knows how to play music really well now, something he didn't really know how to do before. As his character description states, he's in love with Avery since he was 12, and so they kind of start talking a little bit, and there's some flirtation and some sneaking around that happens as she kind of gets out of the house. Ruthie and Violet kind of talk about the level of sneaking around that's happening, notably over their own secret sort of stash of moonshine that they drink out the back of the church. And they kind of talk through some of a number of secrets or rumors that are spinning around. Certainly the rumor that Avery and Johnny are kind of going on long walks together, if you know what I mean. But then also this rumor that maybe Johnny's skills have come about as a result of his selling his soul to the devil for his music skills, his guitar skills. And he's kind of on this long road of going around touring the towns around, trying to get noticed by production houses. And but he's back, and so the rumor mill is spinning. Now, into this comes the relationship with Mama, who is kind of this arbiter of the home. She kind of keeps all of the girls in line. Ruthie's often over eating dinner with them, and is a part of those conversations as Avery slowly sneaks out more and more, and either lies more and more, or comes clean more and more, and begins saying more things like, "I need to get out of this town. Johnny's my way out of this town. He offered to let me go with him on his next tour," as that kind of line slowly builds. Eventually, that starts to cause a lot of pain with both Violet and Ruthie, as well as Mama, for various reasons. But that kind of like knowledge that Avery is likely going to be lost to them, and that she's kind of going in a direction they can't follow, leads like Ruthie to offer to go with Johnny as well on tour. She tries to sing for him, and kind of he says, once you figure out some songs, that maybe you can come on tour, etc. Eventually, though, Avery does essentially sneak away and says she's going to be gone for 2 weeks. She and Johnny go on tour up to Chicago, and says she's going to be gone for 2 weeks. She'll be right back. Don't worry about it. Some time passes. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Eventually, they get a letter that they got married. More time passes. And more this angst begins to build of Mama kind of believing this is God sort of giving her a trial or something like that, or Violet feeling kind of left behind by her older sister who she idolized, Ruthie feeling left behind by Avery, who is like one of her dear friends. And then Avery returns, kind of out of the blue. In the middle of prayer one night, Avery returns, and she is not well. Johnny brings her back and says essentially she got kicked by a horse while I was out, playing music. They told me she fell to the ground unconscious, and when she came back, she can't she doesn't really know who she is anymore. And she has some hardship of engaging the world around her. The people around her doesn't know where she is. And he says she just needs to rest, and I can't take care of her on the road. I got to go to this next show. See ya. And then Johnny's out. And the family starts to take care of her a little bit, try to figure out what's going on with her. But more and more, there's this worry that perhaps as a result of Johnny's deal with the devil, that assumed deal with the devil, some sort of attachment has been made to Avery as well. This is kind of corroborated by the pretty spooky scene that we already talked about, where Avery kind of speaks out the song that Johnny is singing. He sings this song over and over. It's kind of a repeating motif. Basically a full sort of possession-ish sort of scene occurs where she talks about seeing an angel who's going to save her from all the pain. And in fact, that angel's name is Lucifer, much to the chagrin of Mama, who's trying her best to try to figure out some way to save Avery. Obviously, a lot of this blame starts to be directed at Johnny. Johnny must have done something wrong. Something was amiss. So everyone turns against him. Mama turns against him, certainly. Ruthie holds him back from the door. Avery isn't able to kind of interact with him all that much because of their kind of keeping him at bay. To the point that Johnny is continuing to tour around, and he keeps saying, I'm getting close. This producer from New York is here, and they're going to buy my music, and then I'll be able to take care of Avery. He goes out again, does another show. To the point that Mama shows up, at one of his shows and says basically, whatever deal you've made with the devil, you got to take that deal back off of Avery and you got to release her. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't made a deal with the devil. I don't have any sort of hold over her in that way. Mama doesn't believe him. And in fact, she's brought a gun and removes him from the equation with the gun and kills him kind of backstage at a concert. She goes home expecting Avery to have been healed, but in fact, nothing has changed. Then the play sort of like comes to an end, at least for my summary. There's lots more going on in this play, but the play sort of comes to an end with this sort of shocking revelation, this mystery that has been kind of bubbling around the play for so long. Avery sort of starts to step outside. She's coming outside to where Ruthie is. Violet is kind of getting fed up with the way the house is run with Mama. She can't take the pressure anymore, so eventually she packs up and leaves. I'm gonna stay away from the reason why, because that'll be part of our conversation going forward. But she's kind of a lot of family trauma has happened for Violet, and she starts to leave. And then Ruthie and Avery are left in this last scene, and we flash back to an earlier scene where Avery is kind of contemplating leaving, and Ruthie comes out to her and says, I really don't want you to go. Avery says, why did you say that stuff about Johnny, about him kind of making a deal with the devil? And in the scene prior, she just goes back inside and prays with Mama. But we get more of the scene in this last scene. And in fact, we find out that Ruthie and Avery are in love with each other. Certainly Ruthie is in love with Avery, and Avery kisses Ruthie by the end of the scene. And so there is a relationship between the two of them. Then we flash back into the present time, and Avery is in her current state, kind of still disassociated from the world to some extent. And we get the revelation from Ruthie that though many people, and most of the people in the play at this point, besides maybe Mama, we wonder if perhaps they've made a deal with the devil at some point. It is Ruthie who fully confirms it. She pulls out a foreshadowed red letter that she says previously that the devil gives you a red letter that you have to hang on to until you die, otherwise he'll suck you down to hell. She pulls out the red letter, reveals that she was the one who made a deal with the devil to bring Avery back to town. She just didn't know what was the stakes of bringing Avery back to town. And kind of in the last moment of the play, another beautiful image of her burning this letter so she doesn't have it anymore, and she is, in fact, hell opens and it sucks her down into the stage. A wild image. Excited to talk about that. But that's kind of the last image that we see of the play, is the letter burning on stage. Now, there is a big hole in my summary, which are these visions that are not visions, but memories that each of the characters tell. And I wonder if that's maybe a way to kind of start to talk about the play, Jacob, because these visions, I love them. And they're like so important to the revelations of this play, as each of them talk about like past events that they are either processing or feed into the events that are ongoing in the play.
Yeah, so all of the characters, maybe with the exception of Ruthie, although that's a little fuzzy, so that would be Violet and Avery, the sisters, and Mama and Johnny. At various points throughout the play, they have these monologues. They sort of step out of the action of the play, and they tell the audience a story. And they tell the audience a story from the third person perspective, as if they're telling a story that they heard about someone. So, for example, very early in the play, there's what's called the interlude Avery. It says, lights up on Avery. She turns and looks at us, and the lines are, I heard a story once about a girl who was always curious. Even when she was little, she wanted to know everything. And it goes on and on and on. So each of these monologues is told in that way, as a story heard about someone else. And what you slowly sort of build is you piece together these monologues into their own story of the real past version of events of this play. And you come to realize how much offstage or previous action is influencing these characters in a way that you didn't quite understand.
Yeah. One by one, you realize how kind of woven together in trauma this family is. You have Mama's story of how she was kind of caught having an affair with another man by her husband, and that's actually this other man was actually Violet's father, and how kind of the quiet first husband, first man in her life was like so quiet but so repressed that eventually he like freaks out one night, sort of like sleepwalks or sleep knifes into the room and stabs down towards her, but stabs Violet, and so there's this little scar on Violet, though she survives it. So there's that kind of like starting history of the family is one that is steeped
And
in
it also reveals that Mama had an affair, and that Violet is the child of that affair. Now, again, it's not being told in a way that it's necessarily obvious who we're talking about or what's going on. I mean, Mama's talking about another woman that she heard this story about. I will say that to me, I find it easy to tell that they're talking about themselves in the way that it's like, I heard this story about a friend, but that doesn't mean that like there's other additional layers of complication. Like to me, when Mama tells the story about a woman she knew who had an affair and her sort of quiet, weird husband discovers the affair and then kind of goes crazy, to me, it's easy. It seems obvious to me that Mama's talking about herself, but we don't know which of her daughters is the baby. And so there's still like, there's intentional mystery left in each of these stories. They build, I think you immediately tell, oh, this is a story about you. But then it just becomes a question of like, well, what about the other mystery parts of this story?
Right. Yeah. And it's really like maybe I was just perhaps a little obtuse reading this, but it took me all the way till Johnny's monologue, which I think is the third or fourth one of four monologues, that I was like, they're all interconnected.
Yeah. Well, that I think is not revealed for a long time. The interconnectedness of the stories. That Violet is the child of the affair who has the scar on her arm from her father stabbing her, who also got pregnant by Johnny's brother, and who Johnny's brother tried to beat up, and Johnny then ended up kind of accidentally killing him for that. So the interconnectedness of the stories, I think, absolutely is an intentional holdback. They seem like individual, they're not quite ghost stories in the sense that there's a supernatural thing, but they're really hard, scary stories. All of them about human misery. I mean, Avery's is the first one, and it's the least obvious that she's talking about herself. And the most delayed understanding of how it fits into the picture. But it's a story about this town where there were these two sisters who everybody thought was witches, and a young girl in the town started to sort of get to know them and would go get treats from them every day. And then one day the young girl showed up and the town had hung these two sisters. And that's kind of the whole story. That's all you know. You learn very, very late in the play that actually was Avery and what is going on with the quote unquote sisters. So that one's a little separate, but the other three stories, Mama's story of the affair and the child that gets stabbed, then Violet tells the story of a girl that she knows, hint, hint, getting pregnant by the older brother of a friend, and then that older brother beating her up and causing a miscarriage. And then Johnny tells the story of discovering his older brother, a friend that I know's older brother. A friend that I know discovered that his older brother is violent and was violent towards him, the brother, but also especially towards women. And he saw him attack a girl whose name was Flowers with a half-moon scar on her shoulder. And so he then pushes him quite hard into the wall and causes him to die. And so that Johnny's monologue, I think, is intentionally revealed to tie the three stories together: the half-moon scar, Violet's miscarriage, and his brother's death.
Those scenes are so sort of magical in my mind. I'd be so excited to see this play for those scenes. I love the way, especially the evocative way that they refer to, like, obviously no names are said, but the line like a girl whose name was as sweet as a flower, with a half moon scar. Like, all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's not Avery, it's Violet. And then it just leaves so much like good a deduction for you, stuff that like isn't like gonna be so hard that you don't get there, but is one beat removed, so that when you get there, it's like, oh, that's so clever, I love it. So those, all of those visions, or not visions, those memories that they're, the stories that they're telling, have that sort of like really evocative, beautiful imagery woven into the kind of scary and really hard stories that they are.
Well, and that's really the way the play works, right? Is through mystery. That's, I think, like
Yeah.
the central scariness of the play, is the ominous not knowing what's going on. All throughout the script, the, like, I don't know how many times the word darkness appears in the script. It's got to be north of 25 or 30 times, I would think, because the way the play, at least in the script, is imagined to work is that you only see little pools of light where the scenes are taking place, but the stage itself is swallowed by this really present darkness. And all the time throughout the play, characters will, so the stage directions call for, I don't know exactly how you achieve this, but the characters reach into the darkness and bring something out. There's a terrifying scene after Avery's left and Mama's all upset, where she reaches into the darkness and pulls out a bloody headless chicken, which is terrifying, but it's also like, it's not terrifying in the context of the story, because it's just that Mama wants Violet to pluck the chicken so that she can make dinner. But what's scary about it is the context of the play, where things are happening in the darkness, scary things, things that we don't understand, that we're constantly wondering about, and that this bloody corpse, you know, is withdrawn from.
Yeah. I love, so darkness brings up one of the things that I like wanted to have a conversation about in this themed month, because like so much, not the only tool of horror film, but a significant tool of horror film is controlling your perspective.
Yes,
where the
exactly.
camera looks makes things scary because something's off frame. And so one of the biggest challenges in theater is you can't control where the audience's head turns.
Right.
They have the whole stage there for them to see. So you have to control. You have the way that you keep things back is by, you know, flats, lights, and especially shadows and darkness. So this play just deploys that control over perspective in the best possible way that I think a stage play can to evoke horror, is by using darkness, by using shadows and the juxtaposition of shadow and light.
Yeah, and I think too that like what theater has differently than like filmed horror is that you're actually in the room with the things that are going on.
Yeah.
And so all that darkness, all that scariness is actually in the room with you. And there's like an agreement made in a theater show, right? Where you agree that I'm going to believe what's happening. And it's not quite like, actually, York and I talked about this in our conversation. If you're watching a film about, let's say, something that happens at the South Pole, it's like a pretty reasonable and regular sort of experience to go like, you know, that doesn't look enough like the South Pole. That
Sure.
just doesn't look quite realistic, right? But in a theater play about something that happened in the South Pole, it would be 100% completely enough to have a blank, bare stage and slap a sign up that says South Pole. And that would be enough, right? So there is this, there's a suggestion in the theater that is so powerful and possible because the audience agrees imaginatively to create the thing that's happening inside their own heads. But what that means for horror is that you can suggest an awful lot. And it can get quite scary with just small suggestions. In this play, the cat's meow that occurs throughout the play is quite scary. I mean, it's
Uh-huh.
terrifying. And now it's part of this building story at the very beginning of the play. Apparently, Ruthie has this cat that's always been like by her side kind of permanently. And at the very beginning of the play, the cat's vanished and they can't find it. They start talking about, if you have to sacrifice something in order to get your deal with the devil. Then in the middle of the play, Ruthie and the cat kind of make up in a short scene. Then after that, Ruthie says the cat's died. And from then on, in all the scary crap that happens from that point forward, there's this cat's meow that just echoes. And
Yeah.
it's just a suggestion. It's one of those strange things in the theater, right? Because, like, we all know that it's just a recorded sound effect. Like there's no tricking anybody about that. It's just a recorded sound effect. It's coming out of that speaker over there. But because there's an agreement to allow the power of suggestion to create an imaginative experience in our minds, it becomes a very real haunted cat noise that's coming from nowhere.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that that agreement exists and can prompt that. I think this play also does a good job too of not abusing that contract, but instead building on it slowly so that it can pay off really big. Because like if you hit us right out of the gate with that contract and then a big possession scene, you might have enough of a juxtaposed experience that you're like, okay, it's fine, that's an actor. But this play doesn't do that. It starts with the cat. It starts with the cat and slowly builds more and more of these kind of unnerving things so that when finally Avery has this big scene where she's talking about seeing this angel and that's protecting her and the cross turns upside down and everything, the door is flying open and closed and the cat is meowing outside. That's the scene where like you're paying off this contract that you've established for the whole play of like this stuff is like slowly building and so
you're
I think
paying
that
off the darkness too, because by building throughout the play up until that really big scary scene, it's the scene where they're essentially trying to exorcise Avery. They believe that she's got a demon in her. They've seen a doctor who said a kick in the head wouldn't do this. So they're praying and they're singing hymns and they have this big confrontation where, as you described, Avery's eyes go white and she's singing and she's talking about how she saw an angel and then she whispers like the angel's name was Lucifer and things fly all over. The door flies open. There's meowing. There's darkness. She disappears at one point. I mean, it's all very, very scary, but it's built on this payoff of throughout the play, there's this very present darkness. And we know things come in and out of the darkness that we've seen, right? The headless chicken, all things like that throughout it. So we know there is stuff in the darkness, that stuff exists out there that can come in here. And so then, when scary things start to happen and we're surrounded by this darkness, York has done a really smart thing, which is to establish, hey, by the way, there's stuff in that darkness. It's not just the darkness of backstage or offstage. Right. The darkness is where things appear and disappear from. And so we're like, the darkness is what things appear and disappear from. What's coming out of the darkness next?
Yeah, and you're never quite sure. Like characters emerge from the darkness, props, as we already mentioned, beheaded chickens, all sorts of things. And it really creates this sort of like what's going to come out, but then also it makes that like slow close in. That the play ends with these shadows kind of advancing from backstage down towards Ruthie as she kind of reveals that she in fact is the one who has made a deal with the devil to bring Avery back home. So all of that pays off so well with the shadows and their kind of like both their role as like things emerge from them, but also their in creeping onto the lives of the character.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the Ruthie story point a little too, but just to share one more quick story from my conversation with Yerk Walker. He talked about how people had always come up to him, I think this is during the Roundabout production, and told him how scary the play was. And he had always been, it's a little scary, but it's not like a horror movie. Like, okay, it's a little creepy. But usually when he would see the runs, he would be sitting like in a seat in the back that he could sort of slip into and nobody would see him. But for whatever reason, I forget the exact context, and in one particular performance, he had to be seated in the front row. And he talks about coming away from that realizing how scary the play actually is just by his proximity to the events that are happening on stage. And that is part of the theater experience, is that proximity to the scariness. In a horror film, there's other language you have to use to be scary because you're always separated by a screen. You're
Right.
not there where the action's taking place. But in a theater, you are there where the action is taking place. You are right there. If a monster comes out of that darkness, you're like bodily at risk to some degree, you know, to the degree to which you're willing to believe that this is real and that this is really happening.
Especially in like a fourth wall breaking sort of play where characters are talking to you. There's sort of like sometimes there's this contract that like you're not going to break the proscenium wall, like all the action is up there, but these characters aren't doing that. They're telling you stories. So there is this there would be that visceral worry of like, is there going to be something in the audience with me or something like that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. That the sociability of the play, the fact that the characters talk to us, means that we're part of it. We have no protection of, oh, that is happening in this room, but it's happening behind this invisible barrier where I'm just witnessing it. We are part of it because the characters know we're there. To at least some degree, right? Yeah, very scary. So you talk about the Ruthie reveal at the end with the red letter, that she is the one who had made this contract with the devil, had made the sacrifice, which and then at the end you sort of understand, oh, that probably was the cat. Oh, that is what happened to Avery because the deal she made was she wanted Avery to come back from being away with Johnny because she was in love with her. And in a very like, you know, anytime you wish or ask for something from a questionably moral supernatural being, you get what you want, but not how you wanted it. You sort of learn, oh, that's what happened. Avery came back, but not how Ruthie wanted it. So it is this final scene of the play, is this final unlocking of the story that we didn't understand or didn't quite line up all the way up to that point. I want to explore, though, like why this doesn't feel like a big twist at the end that sort of ruins everything that came before it. Because when you reveal such crucial information at the end of the play, this would also be true of the Avery Ruthie scene where we learn that they're, they have some kind of a romantic relationship, which is all hinted at and built up and established, but not revealed till the very end. And then the letter is the final big reveal. So sometimes when you have that, you run the risk of cheapening everything that came before because nothing that you've understood about the story up till that point is relevant anymore. It's what you'd call the sort of big twist at the end that makes you go like, oh, come on, really? Oh, like it was all a dream? Oh, great. Right. So nothing matters. So I'm interested in exploring that because that's not my experience of that. I found it really... satisfying, I don't know, is right. It's horrifying and haunting that what happens, but it is like, it feels like part of the world to me rather than a twist or a change that makes everything irrelevant.
I think it's because at least in my reading of it, I'm so curious why Ruthie is there the whole time.
Yes.
And you don't really get it. Like you get there's a couple lines where they talk about her and Violet being very close friends, and that's clear. Like they're drinking buddies, they hold each other's secrets. But she's very woven into this family. To the point that she's like protecting Avery from Johnny when he shows up. And so I think there's so much seeded as far as like, what's your deal? What's your connection here? And so much seeded with her being the first monologue, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess we're watching Avery primarily. So there's so much in there, so much intrigue in her character, and then you add in lots of the little pieces that are in here that we've already sort of talked about. She's the one who brings up the red letter and seems to have some sort of knowledge of what's going on. The cat is a great one of just like this thing that doesn't like almost seems like a throwaway when you're reading it. It's like, oh man, the cat died. Shoot. But then once it all comes together, it's like, oh my goodness, it was right there the whole time. I think that's what makes good murder mystery, but just mystery in general, is this like, oh my gosh, these little pieces were there the whole time, but because of the magician act of like, look at my left hand while the right hand is doing something, it pays off so well if you at least had the chance to see the right hand doing something. And I think that absolutely happens in this play.
And I also think that the language of this play, as we've been talking about, is mystery, is like an unknown something out there that we can't quite see. That like obscured vision of the stage because of all the darkness, but then also of the story is what the play has been doing all along. I think, established very early on that we don't quite have all the information. We don't quite know everything we need to know. What are these stories? Who are these people we're talking about? And the pieces slowly start to fill in, but it feels very clear to me that we really are missing something. And that the missing something is not the result of a plot hole or anything, but we're being withheld information because that mystery ups the stakes for the play or makes the story more gripping. We want to keep watching and listening because we don't have it all yet. We've gotten glimpses, we have suspicions, but we're missing one crucial thing that's going to unlock why these events are happening. Who is responsible for all this? I think you're right to ask the question, like, what is Ruthie doing here? She's just like a family friend. Like, what does she have to do with any of this? Why is she around? Why does she care? You know, she's accused very early in the play of sort of being in love with Johnny. And we kind of get what we think maybe, I guess, is confirmation of that. In an early scene where she goes to meet Johnny at the music hall, I think that you're describing, and she wants to go on tour with him, and she kind of propositions him, like, I'll take care of your needs while we're on tour. And I think that for us it is a trick, I guess, in that it's designed to make us believe something that we later learn is not quite the case. But the pieces are all there for us to understand that that's not quite true, because she's also very concerned. She's the most concerned, maybe besides Mama, throughout the play about Johnny having made a deal with the devil. And that, that just seems like incongruous. Like, she's in love with him, and at the same time is really thinking that everybody should be really careful and stay away from him because he's made a deal with the devil. So there are incongruous, unmatched things that don't match up, things that don't align. And that becomes like a story version of the darkness on stage.
Yeah. Yep. And that like that darkness eventually like materializes so well because the bait of believing that it's Johnny is just so there. Because I mean, from a real life perspective, we know the folk tale of the devil down in Georgia looking for a soul to steal. We know the folk tale of Robert Johnson and selling his soul for musical talents. So it's just so there. You just so expect it all the way to close to the end when he's shot by Mama. You're expecting it with Mama to pay off. And so when she shows up, like, it's all the way to the end. I mean, I think it's set up for you to believe that. And so you show up there.
I don't know. I think the thing about that scene with Johnny in the backstage area is that he is willing to give up his music. Like, to me, that seems like a crucial decision on behalf of the character, that he has made a decision to give up his music, which is what Violet has asked of him, essentially. He's come around after Avery, the family's been taking care of Avery because of her head injury. And the family is mad at Johnny because he's basically left her there to go play. Now, his point is, I'm a musician. This is what I do to make money. And I think he actually says pretty explicitly at one point, like, there's nothing I can do for her without money. So, I mean, it sucks, but like, I have to go and play these concerts and get these record deals in order to have the money to care for her. But Violet responds to that pretty aggressively late in the play and says, tell you what, you want to prove that you love her. You want to prove that you want what's best for her. Give up your music. Give up being a rock star. Just come to this town, get a regular job that will allow you to be near all the time. And that's the last we see from Johnny for a little while, until this backstage scene where he makes this decision. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give up my music to go be with Avery and to care for her in the way that I want. And it's, it's great tragic writing, that in that moment that he makes the decision is this moment that Mama shows up and shoots him. But to me, at least, when I was experiencing the story, that was an indication that, like, oh, the things that Johnny's been saying all along are true. And we've wondered about them. Was it really true that she got this head injury, or did he beat her up, or did he sell his soul to the devil to do something to her? Are the bruises on her arm really, as he says, because when she like goes body flailing crazy like the exorcism, like he has to kind of like hold her in place to prevent her from hurting herself? Or are the bruises the result of him beating on her? Violet really thinks he's been beating on her, in part because she was beat on by his older brother. And so that's why she wants him to give up the music, blah, blah, all that to say, when he makes the decision to give up the music, at least my experience of it is that confirmed for me his innocence, that he really, really did just want to make money to help take care of Avery, really does love her, really is just trying to do what's best.
Yeah. I think I can come around to that. I think I do believe that in that last moment, he's kind of like, no, this is like the last gig or something like that. And he's kind of wrapping it up, and it's too late, tragically. But yeah, so I think that certainly could be a warning sign to us in that scene that, like, perhaps this is not going to turn out.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is like what our experience of Mama too, right? Is that Mama is this deeply, very specifically religious person, and her intense religiosity is, I think the perspective of the play is that it's hurtful to the people around her throughout. And so I don't think that, like, because she's the one who comes to ask him to give up the deal with the devil, I don't necessarily find myself like willing or interested in being on her side about her perspective of the demonic events of the play. It maybe would be a very different scene if Ruthie had come with the gun.
Sure.
And then maybe I'd be more willing to go like, well, somebody that I trust and that whose perspective is more balanced seems to really believe this is the case.
Yeah. The way that like rumors work and who says like who knows what in this play and who we trust based on the information is such an intricate part of this play. We're coming down to near the end of our conversation time. We didn't get to talk at all about, we talked a little bit about the scariness, but not really like the technical spectacle of this play. Specifically, I
mean, that's what's just so great about it. There's not much spectacle to. I mean, it is spectacular, but there's not a lot, at least in my director's brain, of like complicated technical action.
Yeah. The one that stands out to me as a sound designer that just it would be so cool is there's this great scene where they go out to the graveyard where the devil supposedly is nearest to the world, and this thunderstorm comes up, goes down, goes back up again, and that would be just such a fun technical challenge as a sound designer to make that a really visceral experience. The way there's like small pieces throughout the play, but the way that all like feeds into the narrative is such a cool part of this play as well.
And it's such a great example of how theater can use suggestion and things that we know how they work to be something else. Again, like we know the cat's meow is just coming out of the speaker, but because we believe we have the suspension of disbelief, we're willing to accept the experience we're having. It's suddenly spooky and mysterious. The cross turning upside down on the wall is a great example. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And yet, I mean, it's just like I think everybody understands, there's a stagehand behind the wall who's turning the cross upside down. And but weirdly, that becomes part of the scariness, right? Because there's something out there manipulating the events that we can't see, that is doing it in a mysterious, unobservable way. There's action being controlled by people we don't understand. So some of the stuff about the horror of this play is like the theater, the kind of structures of the theater event, that there's a whole team of people working out there in the darkness to achieve all that, becomes like weirdly synonymous with the idea that there's like a group of demons out in the darkness out there working to make all this happen.
Every theater's technician's dream job title. Hey, thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation. While we are at the end of this particular podcast, we would love to keep chatting about this play with all of you. And we can do that because the internet is still a thing. So you can find us on the social medias for now. You can find us on the social medias at the username at NoScriptPodcast. We also have a Gmail, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep chatting about Covenant with you.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, the first conversation of our themed month, please recommend us to your family or friends, anybody you know that likes theater, storytelling, writing, conversations about any of those things. And also, for this month, conversations about horror, about the nature of being scared, about what it is that we know and don't know, and how that fear is built in us. We're going to have, 3 more great episodes about that as well. Recommend us, please, and they can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Podbean, the places where you get your podcasts. If you like our Facebook page, a link to the new episode appears easily there every Monday for you to click and play. Until next week, when we are back with another spooky episode about theater's scariest scripts. I'm Jacob, here with Jackson. Thanks for joining us for No Script the Podcast.